Hello everyone and welcome back to one of the most important algebraic concepts slash topics in maths, that is factorizing and solving quadratic equations. This comes up literally everywhere and it starts at about year 9, year 10, it works it all the way through to the end of high school. So let's get into it. The very first question we have is x squared plus 11x plus 24 is equal to 0. And whenever we see an equation equal to 0, this should trigger a little thought that I'm going to need to solve, okay? Things equal to 0 typically means solving. That's not just true with quadratics, that's true with most things. If my equation or any equation equals 0, we need to solve. So the second thing is the question specifically asks us to factorize. Now, if it just said solve, we do have another option of solving using quadratic formula, and I'm going to make a video about that later on. But because this question asks us to factorize, we need to factorize the quadratic first, then solve the equation. So when factorizing quadratics, I really want to check what number is here in front of my x squared term. If no number is written, we assume the number 1, and why this matters is really have two main techniques for factorizing quadratics. We have techniques for monic quadratics, mono meaning 1, which means I have a little 1 out the front of my x squared. This quadratic here we would call a monic quadratic. Okay, if it's not a number 1, that'll also be covered in a separate video. That is non-monic quadratics. We have a different technique or a different method for that. So first things first, identify, is it monic or is it non-monic? This one is monic. If we do have a monic quadratic, we now want to look for factors, numbers that multiply to give 24 and are going to add to give 11. So I'm looking for numbers that add to give 11, multiply to 24, and they need to be the same pair of numbers. It's almost like a little puzzle. Now, depending on how good we are at identifying factors, the sort of beginner strategy I recommend is to simply just make a factor list, okay? So I've got 1 and 24, I've got 12 and 2, we're just thinking of numbers that multiply to give 24, I've got 8 and 3, and I've also got, if I scroll down here a little bit, I've also got 6 and 4. So I have, these are my sort of 4 factor pairs for 24. Once I've identified my factors, again, I know all these numbers multiply to give 24. Because I have a positive sign here, I know the two numbers that are going to be multiplied have to have the same sign. Either both negative or both positive. Well, because my answer over here is also positive, then I know that both my numbers have to be positive, so I can simply just add each of these little pairs together, get my answer, and I can use that to identify which numbers add to give 11. Now, 1 plus 24 gives 25, 12 plus 2 equals 14, 8 plus 3 equals 11, which is the number we're looking for, but just for the sake of doing all of it, 6 plus 4 is going to equal 10. So I've added all my pairs up, I've identified the pair that gives my number in the middle, that is 8 plus 3 is equal to 11, and now I'm going to factorize my quadratic. Now, if we've done a little bit of expansion, we will realize that a factorized quadratic looks something like this. It's 2 bracket pairs, each are binomial, so 2 terms in each bracket, and the way my first number comes, this is my x squared term, I know I'm doing a lot of arrows, but this x squared term here comes from multiplying the first 2 numbers in my set of brackets. Well, what 2 numbers multiply to give x squared? Specifically, 1x squared, that is going to be x and x. Okay, so x multiplied by x gives x squared, and this is common for all of our quadratics. We start with these 2 sort of x terms at the beginning. The other 2 spots that I'm missing come from this pair of numbers over here. So my 2 numbers are positive 8, so I write plus 8, and positive 3, so I write plus 3. So I've taken my equation, x squared plus 11x plus 24, I've factorized my equation into x plus 8 multiplied by x plus 3, and everything is still equal to 0. Now, I said multiply before. It's important to realize we have a little multiplication symbol between my 2 brackets. Now, if I'm solving an equation, I'm multiplying 2 numbers together, I get an answer of 0. That is only possible if one of those 2 numbers is 0. Okay, this is a fancy name. We call it null factor law. That means that my first bracket could equal 0, and I'll get an answer of 0. It also means my second bracket could equal 0, and that means I get an answer of 0. So there's actually 2 answers to this question. I have the answer when my first bracket equals 0, and I have the answer when my second bracket equals 0. Now, as we go through and do more work on quadratics, we'll realize why there's 2 solutions. For now, I think the idea of thinking about, okay, I'm multiplying 2 numbers, I get an answer of 0, that means I have 2 situations where that's true. So if I solve my first bracket equal to 0, I get x plus 8 all equal to 0. I'm now just simply going to rearrange a very small linear equation. I'm going to do the opposite of adding 8. That means I subtract 8 from each side, and I get an answer of x is equal to, I'll scroll down just a touch, negative 8. Same thing to the other side. I get x plus 3, or the other bracket, I guess I should say. Again, that all is equal to 0, and I'm going to subtract 3 from each side, and I get x equals negative 3. And I've now solved my quadratic. I've identified my two solutions. That means the two answers to my equation. Therefore, x is equal to negative 8, and it's also equal to negative 3. I have two answers to any, or well, to most quadratic equations. There are a few situations, right? There's always exceptions to the rules. Typically, two solutions is common. I can get two solutions, one solution, or 0 solutions. We'll cover that in a totally separate video. I hope you guys found this helpful. There'll be more factorizing videos with some tips and tricks coming out. This is just sort of an initiation to both solving and factorizing a relatively straightforward monoquadratic. I hope you found it helpful. Like I said, always feel free to comment down below, and I will try to answer those and make other videos if there's specific things you guys want to know.